Hello there and welcome to another What If video. Today's video we'll be going over what would have happened if Finn found Luke on Ahch-To at the end of The Force Awakens. Now this was not left by a comment but is rather one of my own ideas. As we've been very prequel focused for these What If videos, I decided I'd put one of my sequel videos in there. Now the difference this would make to Star Wars as we know it is, unlike Rey, who was a nobody as far as anyone was concerned, Finn would be an ex-stormtrooper and would remind Luke of his father, Darth Vader, and his redemption, and would bring back hope, especially with him thinking he's lost his nephew. Much like Kylo, Vader redeemed himself after all the dark deeds he had done, and I'm sure Luke, having read about all the other Jedi and knowing all this knowledge, would definitely know about Vader's slaughter of the younglings, even if it was just Kenobi that told him, much like Kylo slaughtered his temple of students. Finn would reignite this hope in Luke and would urge him to train better Jedi and not make the mistakes he did with his nephew, bringing him back into the rebellion, and they would leave swiftly with Chewie in the Falcon. It's here that Luke would learn about Han being no more, and we'd get a very touching scene in the Falcon where Luke would show his emotions about losing not only his brother-in-law but one of his best friends in the galaxy. One thing that I felt was missing from the sequel trilogy was an emotional attachment that we felt in the originals and prequels, and even though this could be down to them not flushing out characters as much and might improve with the new Daisy Ridley movie, I feel like having more scenes like Chewie breaking down when Leia dies would just keep audiences attached to the screen and wouldn't just move on after certain characters die, like Admiral Akbar, who just floats off screen and is never seen again. Finn, having reignited Luke's hope, would soon be trained as a Jedi alongside Rey, as both of them would need each other to survive in the galaxy. Their mission would be to keep peace in the galaxy, though both of them would try to return Kylo to the light side and bring back Ben Solo. Luke would not teach either of them to remove their attachments, as they are all part of the rebellion, and Luke knows more than anyone about wanting to save your friends. He would be teaching both Finn and Rey to be mindful of such connections, and also would lead to Rey not being fooled by the connection the Emperor makes between herself and Kylo Ren. Having returned to the fight, Luke would recognise Snoke from a duel that they'd previously had, which is alluded to in one of the comics where Snoke speaks to Kylo, and would know exactly who the Puppet Master is. Now, there would not have been enough time for Luke to have trained other Force users. However, with himself, his sister, Finn and Rey, they'd become like a family, like Anakin and Padme always wished they had, and would go to take down the Emperor themselves. Luke had already been to Exegol and was actually protected by the ghost of his father, and would know exactly where the Emperor's to be found and what he needs to do. Now, when Rey and Kylo showed up separately, the Emperor was able to deal with them to an extent, holding off Kylo with his Knights of Ren, and Rey not knowing what she needs to do and finding out that she was related to this menace. With the 4 Jedi that are now united to take on Palpatine, each knowing what they have to do, Palpatine doesn't really stand much of a chance and can use all the tricks up his sleeve, but will not win this time round. Much like in Return of the Jedi, where Anakin was able to kill Palpatine, this time they'd have to make sure he was not able to transfer himself onto any other clone bodies. This would mean whilst Luke and Leia are fighting off the Emperor, just like their father, Finn and Rey would go around destroying all the tanks and getting rid of all the Sith acolytes that were there to support Palpatine, being perhaps the Sith of the past. Luke and Leia's duel would perhaps drag on, with Leia being out of practice for so long, and Luke having been left on an island, shutting himself off from the Force until Finn showed up. However, with all the Jedi behind them, they would eventually put Palpatine to rest, not just destroying his body, but destroying his very essence, shattering it to pieces, deflecting his own lightning, as we see Rey in the movie. Whether or not he would find a way to return Perhaps transferring his essence into another soul such as Luke's we would be yet to see, but for now Palpatine would be dead and balance would be brought to the galaxy. With Palpatine gone, the Final Order will disband and all the ships will be bombed by the New Republic fleet, or the Resistance, whichever remains. Luke and Leia would begin their own temple, perhaps on Ahch-To or another world nearby, and Finn and Rey would finish their studies becoming better Jedi than either of the twins could have imagined. They will be training a new generation of Jedi, one that is not fearful of attachments and follows such rules and strict political procedure as the previous order, and that will more efficiently bring balance to the galaxy. Thank you for watching today's What If, and personally I think this would be really interesting if Finn did find Luke instead of Rey, as Rey deemed herself a nobody and Luke only started training her when he found out she was related to Palpatine. Next week I'll get back to your comments on my last What If videos, and we'll be exploring what ifs all the way up to the Ahsoka show, which takes over this Wednesday slot, so perhaps I'll have to change the date, or I'll postpone it till afterwards, giving me more time to dive deep on the Easter eggs of Ahsoka. May the Force be with you, always.